obvious I'm supposed to report on action, and there was no reportable action in that closed session. Approval of agenda. We need to pull item 12, and that's approving the expense reimbursement policy. There's been some issue about it.
Yeah, you want to comment on it, Tom?
Just minor. We're going to consider it later, so we'll pull that item off unless somebody wants it. Was it one of the unions had a question?
Yeah, it just some last minute issues came up, and the consensus of the group was it would be better to not have action taken on it. Apologize for the late notice.
Okay, we have open time for the public.
Wait.
Okay, any other changes to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so at 8C, I'd like to pull,
You'd like to pull what?
interim the financial.
And that is C8C.
Yeah, but we're just approving the agenda now, we're not actually.
Well, wait a minute, I'm not done. Let me just finish. There is
Point of order?
Yeah, we may do this under 8.
Yeah, you do this under 8.
We
You
do
pull
this
them
under
under
8.
8.
Okay, but I do want to pull an information in the back for discussion. Wouldn't I do that now?
You want to pull it?
Yep. I want to talk about the financial
Information
committee.
item?
So I have some issues on the financial committee that I noticed, and I'd like the board to discuss them as an item.
So you're going to remove informational item C and add it as a new item
Yeah.
17?
Yeah.
Number 14 is what?
Can we do like, I guess 14A or should we do 17, I guess? I don't know how it should be numbered.
Yeah, let's just add it as
Let's
17.
make it
Okay.
17.
That's it. Sorry for the confusion.
And then you pull 12.
We were going to discuss that. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, so no, that's okay. Open time for public to raise items not on the agenda for future consideration. Any public member would like to, any member of the public would like to make any comments to the board? Seeing none, we'll move on. Standing committee report out, and I would like to use this one to go over some of the financing issues that the finance committee has, so maybe this might answer some of the questions.
I want a full board discussion, so I think it should go on the agenda.
Well, then let's move item 17, the finance committee. Is it involving the bonds that you want to talk about?
That and a couple other things.
Well, anything that's involving the bonds, we've got Mr. Gibbs here. And I don't want him to wait till the end of the meeting to be talking about that.
Can we bring that?
Let's take item 17 and move it up to,
13.
I'd like to move it ahead of the consent calendar,
Oh, okay.
because we always take a long time on the consent calendar.
A 7B,
Yeah, so 7B. Is that okay with the board?
7A.
We'll settle it in the committee. 7B is a finance.
Okay.
It's not all that, by the way. It's not all on the bonds that I want to talk about, on the
Okay, that's
financial
okay.
aspects of it, just so you know.
Okay. So standing committee report out. We're going to do the finance committee. Does the HR committee have?
We did not meet.
So the finance committee did meet, and Mr. Gibbs has given us a handout here, and we'd like to briefly go over it. And so the first page, and please, if you have any questions, the first page is a schedule. We might note that we're holding a competitive bond sale. Now, last time, when we did the bond issue, it was negotiated. An underwriter was picked based on an RFP process, and his fee was set. This time, we're holding a competitive sale. We're getting everything set to go. We have documents all prepared, legal documents prepared. You'll hear about insurance a little bit. Ready to go, and then we conducted a sale, and the bond sale is scheduled for Thursday, October 30th. and underwriters can bid on the bonds, and the lowest interest rate gets it. And that's the way generally recommended by the GFOA and how to conduct a sale. Everybody understand that? Okay. So then, one of the issues was, and Jim might want to explain this, when you sell a bond issue as a bit of security for the bond investors, you have a reserve fund. It's funded from bonds proceeds. It's held by the trustee. It can be invested, and it's used to pay off generally the final bond maturity. It's real money that's invested and held. And this is on our handout here, page 2. So Jim's firm did a review of how to handle it. And we can either fund it or we can buy insurance to cover it. And so maybe quickly, if you could go over.
You know, can I just say something? I think I would have preferred, rather than an informational item from the finance committee, that this was really an agenda item. If we're going to have open discussion and converse back and forth with the bond advisor. Do you know where I'm at? That's a whole different thing.
We don't
report out on a meeting.
We don't have to make a decision on this. And the date that is scheduled, this is how we got here. The date that is scheduled here is all the decisions have to be made, all the documents have to be approved at one of our board meetings, October. And we thought it would be a good idea to review some of the basic concepts that go into this before we have to approve all the documents. This gives us an extra opportunity to discuss this.
I understand. I think what I'm trying to say is the committee, to report on a committee is just to report on the committee, and it's not to have a lot of dialogue with the bond advisor and the board. Maybe council could help me with this a little bit, and rather than vote on something. Do you see what I'm at?
Let me just,
Yeah,
to clarify, because what I understand is the board delegated to the finance committee to help just drive the process. They've met several times. The finance, what I'll call the bond team, so the bond counsel, the financial advisor, staff, and the finance committee. So out of that series of discussions to move the whole process forward, Pam, we've gone, we've kind of funneled things down. So, okay, we've got an approximate amount. We're just checking the box on some basic options in terms of how the bond sale proceeds. So what I had suggested to the group the last time we had we discussed, was it Monday of this week? No, it was Friday last week, I think. Was it Monday this week?
Monday this
Monday this week.
Finance committee.
Thank you. It was Monday. We spoke on Friday. The team spoke on Friday. That's what I was referring to. I emphasized the point that it would be important to just bring the board along in terms of the basic progress, the decisions that were being made. They're kind of functional decisions, like the competitive sale versus negotiated. But we wanted you guys not to kind of get hit with everything at once on the 15th. So these are informational updates. They're not nuanced, policy items or decisions for the board for the most part. They're just basically the business of the bond structure and getting the sales set up. So I hope that clarifies. And that's basically what you're hearing from Jim and from Tom.
Yeah, because it is confusing. If you look at the minutes, there's a lot of things that are thrown in and out, and it's not been at the board level. It's just been at the committee level. And that's where I'm going with this, is I want the board to be clear on what is happening, and should the board be,
Yeah, which is exactly why we kind of urged this report out, so you would at least have the basics, available. Okay, here's what's going on with the process, and we've still got. Let me throw this out real quick because I don't want to tie up your discussion. If it's beneficial between now and say early October to have any kind of a breakout focused discussion with some or all the board members, by all means that's something we can do. The bond sales always involve a lot of information, but everything you're hearing about in this report out was just what I would call the standard key information that you want to know about.
Okay, I'm just worried about changes being made without board discussion.
I just wanted to kind of clarify.
Because it looks that way in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate being brought up to speed on this because this is
What did you
Although,
say?
I appreciate being brought up to speed on this, because otherwise it's gonna be a whole lot of information a month from now.
And not only that, we have to structure the issue, we have to make some decisions on it. And so I want, we need to discuss them, and we don't have to make any decisions right now, but when the time of the bond sale, we can't decide whether we want a reserve fund surety or not. We've got to have it set when we send out all the documents so people can bid on it. So we can review this again under an agenda item. We can make an agenda item out of it. But I would like to just quickly show you the type of things we're thinking about. And no decision is required. And so one of the issues is, should we have a reserve fund or not? And there has been an analysis, it's page 2 of the handout. Should we have a reserve fund or not? And there are options. And I was hoping that Mr. Gibbs could explain that.
Okay. So as Tom described, an important tool in putting a bond issue into the market is to have a reserve fund. It sits there, as you said, for the life of the issue. Why is it there? In the event there's a hiccup with the district's finances, and every 6 months you make an interest payment, every year you make a principal payment, and if you don't quite have enough money on one of those dates to make the payment, the reserve is there to cover you while you get things straightened out. Frequently today, the reserve funds are being left out of bond issues, particularly for districts and cities that are in very good financial condition. Why are they being left out? Well, while the reserve is sitting there for 25, 30 years, you want to invest it. The money, you borrow the money. The money, costs you. You have to pay interest on that money. And today we're estimating that's about 3.5%. Well, while it's sitting in the reserve fund, you would like to invest it and make up that 3.5% with the investments that you make. Today, that's impossible. There's nothing. Treasuries don't earn anywhere near that amount. So, sort of a breakthrough in the industry has been just to forget about the reserve in strong financial conditions. You're strong enough that you can do that. We've spoken with a number of traders in the market, talked to the rating agencies and the insurers, and frankly, having a reserve is sort of a discretionary matter for you. So we've looked at 5 different approaches to structuring your issue, and they're summarized under this table, cost of the reserve fund. Let me just sort of walk through them quickly and describe in a little more detail what each of them consists of. So in the first case, it says AA insured with surety. This represents doing the bond issue exactly the way you did it in October last year. You acquired insurance on the bonds from Assured Guarantee, and you paid a premium for that insurance. That insurance guarantees your payments in the future to bondholders. In addition, you had the reserve fund structured in there, but you took an alternative path to solve this investment problem by purchasing another insurance policy that sits in the reserve fund and takes the place of those invested money.
Well, I don't think we knew that.
You did it last year.
I understand. I don't think we as a board knew.
Knew that you did that?
Well, that's why I'm having Jim come in.
I'm happy to be here.
Exactly the reason. Thank you.
And that's, it turns out, we have done calculations of, how the bond issue will function under all these assumptions. And it turns out that with the insurance and with that special policy we call the surety sitting in the reserve fund and taking the place of all of the invested money, once again this year, that's the best way to do it. And you can get a sense of the scale here. the second column under annual debt service estimate, you can see that your annual debt service, principal and interest, we estimated $1,647,000. Now, the next alternative that we took a look at, which is not to have the bond insurance and not to have a reserve fund, which is one of your options, is sort of the next best alternative. It's a little more expensive. It's about $20,000 a year more in annual debt service. In addition, it's possible to do the bond issue without the insurance, but with the surety policy sitting in the reserve fund that you do include. That one is pretty close, but just a shade more expensive, we estimate. Number 4, you could do the bond issue without insurance, and you can fund the reserve fund, put it in there, and you can have invested in a long-term fixed income investment vehicle. There are special, basically, investment contracts. They're called guaranteed investment contract. That's what the GIC stands for. And today you could get a 30-year investment contract with a yield of 2.4%. But that's less than the 3.5% the bonds will cost you. And you can see that is considerably more expensive in annual debt service than the first alternative. Lastly is the most cautious and conservative approach, but the least attractive, which is no bond insurance. The A plus means that we're selling the bonds on your own rating, which is A plus. So no bond insurance on the bond issue. You fund the reserve fund, and you take the most conservative approach to investing it, which is to purchase 6 months treasuries that mature and you roll over and invest another 6 months in treasuries. And that yields practically nothing in today's market, you're probably aware. So the debt service is the highest of all of those cases. And the differences are
So case 1 is we pay for some insurance. It gives our bonds a AA rating instead of an A plus rating. We get the insurance company's rating. The interest rate goes down, but we do have to pay a premium to the insurance company. But that's offset by a reduction in interest rates.
And how much is that?
For about a $30 million issue, it's about $80,000 one time premium.
And it's included in the issue cost. Okay, so that's information. The study was done. Looks like it should indicate that I think our financial advisor is going to recommend getting insurance with a surety. And no decision is needed, but you understand how to do it. Now, the next thing that I wanted us to discuss, I asked staff to prepare a list of the projects that we're going to do, and that's page 3. And remember, we had to size the bond issue, and I said, well, how did we size the bond issue? What are the projects? And so here's a list of the projects, and it adds up to about $33 million, and it's based on our priority ranking, right, Craig?
Yes.
So those it's the key projects to do, and the plan is to do them over 2 years, about. And if it extends to 3 years, then we do them over 3 years, and if it extends to 4 years, then we do them over 4 years. But we have to have the reasonable expectation that you're going to do them in 3 years, which we did. And so then, for the board's information, there's a discussion on competitive sale and negotiated sale, and we're not going to go over that tonight, but you can read it.
Preferably early in the morning with a cup of coffee.
But anyway, I think that's what the finance committee spent a lot of time on.
Tom, I don't know if you already touched on this, but did you want to, we also looked briefly at the difference between the 25 and 30-year term.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's been an interest of past discussions.
It's an interest of
before,
mine. And we could sell 30-year bonds, or we could sell 25-year bonds. And Yeah, 30-year bonds are cheaper annually, but you've got to pay debt service for 5 extra years. And we're going to be financing projects forever. Not necessarily selling bonds, but we're going to be building projects forever. And there is a difference in a shorter maturity. The first test on how long the bond is the life of the facilities, and certainly these facilities have a life of in excess of 30 years, we would expect. But anyway, that's something for the board to just take a look at. Last time we sold 30-year bonds, I'd never want to go longer than that, me personally.
That was a 17, 49 we sold last year.
Yeah.
It was 30 years.
I have a personal preference, which we don't really about, but that's okay.
Did I read in here something about taking that and combining it, what we just recently did financially, or am
Well, the proceeds from the last sale are
I?
projected to be,
The small bond, just to.
yeah, those are going to be essentially spent, I think, in this current fiscal year.
Well, we've got them shown on the table on page 4. There's about 2.7 million.
Yeah, contributing,
left.
that's probably where they're gonna be.
So there won't be a-
Remaining.
So they're gonna be,
I'm not sure if that was your question, Pam, but there won't be much overlap between them.
See, the bonds can be used for any legal purpose, and in the bond document, it says the project is defined as that list of projects that's on the table on page 4, but then it's got a thing that says, or any other capital projects that the district deems to do. So you can substitute projects, and that's no problem. You know, you say one of these.
So somebody blow a line someplace else, it's not even on this
It's
list.
not on the list, then you're done. Yeah, you need that language, I
Yeah.
don't.
And I'm sure,
Absolutely.
because these capital growth programs will always change, so this bond issue is on parity with the previous bond issue. It's coming from, in essence, it's just an extension of the previous bond issue.
I have a question. So you're saying no reserve, and Willis went bankrupt recently, he had no reserve.
Mhm.
So how do you safeguard this agency with no reserve?
Well, today, you're in much better condition. You're building reserves. And
You approve a rate increase.
No, I
and
just
build
want
up
to,
reserve.
I want a straight answer. How do we, if something happens, what do we do if we have no reserves? We just went through this.
Is it-
Right,
is
had to
it-
go to
is
the
it now with
county
the
and get
insurance?
emergency
Is it
funds.
Is it two different reserves?
Yeah.
Are you talking about a reserve for the bond measure?
Yeah.
And over here is the reserve
Reserves
that we
for
have
emergencies?
for our
Is there two
our
different-
finances?
So let me see if I
There's
can.
two
Yes.
buckets.
Let me start.
Well, then
and
you
yeah.
need to clearly state that.
Yeah, okay, so it sounds like we're clear. So we are, under the financial plan that these bonds are supporting, we're going to be steadily allocating monies to the specific reserves I think you're thinking of, Pam.
Mhm.
The O&M emergency reserve, the capital program reserve, and the emergency reserve.
Mhm.
So the reserve that Jim is referring to is a very small, very targeted reserve that is only to make sure you have the ability to cover the debt service payments on those bonds. So it's a much, much smaller slice of our financial picture. Those other reserves are being developed under the next couple of years,
Okay.
that this is.
I mean, that's what we just approved in the
Yeah, no,
rates,
your
right?
question makes total sense, they're two different
Yeah.
reserves, yeah.
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 Okay.
This is a specific and restricted reserve,
Okay.
only for this purpose.
So the minute taker, I don't know how that got misconstrued in here, but it needs to be. I mean, you're talking a lot about reserve in here, but you're not,
Oh,
Defining.
we didn't specify.
it just says get rid of the reserve fund, I'm like,
Yeah, no, no, no,
Yeah.
Get rid of the
It's
reserve
the
fund, I
bond.
can't believe that's in there.
that makes
Okay.
sense, yeah.
Now, that was all I was planning to do, but if anybody else has any questions, and we appreciate Jim being here. Okay, and you're receiving ahead the documents and.
Even ahead.
Yeah, so maybe to recap what the board would expect at the October 15th, is it the 15th? The October 15th meeting. You're going to be, as this process is proceeding, again, you're just seeing some of the key basic business decisions and so forth. What you'll be seeing on the 15th will be essentially the draft package. So it'll be the official official statement. Thank you. And that will be really, that's a very important milestone in the process. So we want to make sure that you have what you need information-wise to be comfortable, with any decisions on the 15th. So this is information only to take away this evening, and again, I kind of want to urge everyone, because it's a very important process, even though it has a fairly business-like aspects to it, or in a sense. Let us know if we can provide you and set aside more time for any one of these topics. But we have several weeks to do that, so you shouldn't feel rushed. I just want to make that point. It was an important decision. We've got time. I don't want you to feel like we're kind of dumping on you this evening, because we have plenty of time to go back through this. If you have items you want to dig into, Jim is available. Obviously, Tom, we're all available individually. The team meets and talks, several times a week right now to keep this process moving. So there's it's a very involved, dynamic process. We're bringing you the highlights right now. So, if there's stuff you want to dig into, don't hesitate. We can dig into it with you.
Who's on the bond team?
When I say the bond team, I'm basically, to me, that's the financial advisor. That is the bond disclosure counsel, who's not here this evening, but Sean Tierney and his firm, district staff, and the finance committee. That's kind of my tag for the bond team.
And did I see in the agenda you wanted a public advisory committee?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
If I might, procedurally also, to be prepared in October, we will have to meet as the Ross Valley Public Financing Authority as well, and approve documents as that body, as well as the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board. So just from a procedural standpoint, be prepared.
Thank you.
But when are we gonna talk about the 25 versus 30 years bond sales? Is that?
That would be a good example of a breakout, I think, we want to delve into then, Frank, because what you've seen tonight is just a real initial evaluation of the trade-offs. How would you guys like to proceed on that? I mean, I know it's an important point.
Should we make it an agenda item, or?
Well, here's my suggestion. I would
Not tonight.
I would suggest just procedurally, because it will make the discussion move. If that's a particular item of interest, Frank, I would suggest meeting with the bond team, just minus no more than one other board member, so we don't have a meeting quorum or anything like that. And we can delve into that topic, and then if we want to report out just via email or something for the rest of the.
Isn't the board gonna make that decision, 25?
Well, you want to weigh in on it, certainly. Yeah,
Who makes that decision?
The board will make the decision.
Okay, okay.
That's why I wanted to come over, go over some of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, that decision's rolled into that activity in October, so you want
Is that too late?
You can make that decision the day before the sale.
Okay, so we can do that tonight of all those documents.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
As this process is moving along over the next month,
Mhm.
do you think it would be beneficial
I mean, it's out
For
of
us
the
to
hand, but we'll be spending
to see, like, if you reach a milestone, like, okay, looks like what we're gonna do, to email at that point, this is what's happening at this time, so that we're in October, not for, that it would be good for me, I think, to have
Sure.
information along the way, so that I can call and ask questions of Tom.
As long as we don't break the Brown Act.
I'm getting
Okay,
worried.
I can call and ask questions.
One-on-one, I live here.
Okay.
My office is in Sausalito. And I'm happy just to meet one-on-one over coffee and just,
That would be great.
give you, you'll be put to sleep, but,
No,
tell you whatever you want to know.
that's a problem.
Whatever you want.
He won't, Jim.
Right here. Okay, any more questions on that?
Actually, to make one comment in response to Pam. You're actually a very strong financial entity here.
Don't say that, but.
Well,
I
but
mean,
you
I've
are.
been on the finance committee for 2 years. I've been through a lot.
We know
A lot.
the
So
history.
my antennas are like this.
Sure.
And this is a lot of money. And I'm very worried about something could go awry. So I'm sorry. Please don't take it personal, but I'm very protective of the rate here. So very protective. So anyway, go ahead.
So the industry takes a very close look at you. The official statement is, in writing, everything that investors should know. And you have so many good things going for you. First of all, this is a wealthy area. People pay their property taxes very reliably, on average. They really do. That's a big factor. Secondly, it's well known, you know, the turbulence that you went through. You know, the deck has been cleared, you know, a very solid management team. You've adopted a 5-year rate increase, which counts for a great deal. We're going to provide in the official statement, you know, a forecast of what that means as far as how well you covered your obligations. And all of those, you know, you have an A+ rating, which is a very good rating. I think you're going to be a AA in a relatively short period of time. You know, I'm advisor to the Marin Municipal Water District, and they're a AA. And you know, the story is very, very similar.
Do you think we could bring our rates down at all, or any of the bond money? Is that potential?
That's the way that's the danger.
Yeah.
That will drop.
Because that was,
You're
that was,
getting the worst
that was
thing.
discussed. Let him.
Yeah, you know, you're going to get very good terms on your bond money because of the rates that you have.
But I mean, if we don't spend all of our money, this was a lot of discussion in the finance committee. I just wanted, if you're going to come back to this and touch base with that, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. It's all in a model. Okay, well, sorry, Tom.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. Okay, anyone? Okay, so let's see, I'm a little bit confused what we did with our agenda. Pamela, is there other things on the finance committee that you would like to discuss? If so, we'll put them on 17. Be on item 17.
Okay, and I want to pull C.
Okay, we'll pull C. Okay, so any,
Oh, I'm sorry, and D.
and which one?
D.
B?
D is in
D.
dog.
On the consent.
So we're
Yeah.
on item 8 now?
We're on consent still. We
We're on
never.
item 8, consent calendar.
We were on, no, we were on standing.
That was stand committee report.
Okay, well, I
We
think
were on
we did.
reporting out committees.
Okay, do we have any
And
other
there's
standing
more
committee
committees.
reports?
Well, there's more committees to report out. Weren't we?
No, so there's.
HR didn't meet.
Okay,
Okay,
so there's no.
so the North Bay Watershed, Matt?
That's not a committee, that's board.
Oh, that's right.
That's at the end, verbal reports.
Yeah.
Okay, I get confused.
We'll
with
get it.
that.
So any other, no other standing committee?
CMSA.
Right. Right. Okay, 8, consent calendar. And we've got a motion to pull out C and D. Okay, so,
Move to approve A and B.
yeah, so the minutes, there's any discussion on, well, we'd like a motion to approve 8A and B, the minutes of the various meetings.
I move to approve A and B on the consent calendar.
Okay, any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Okay, C. 8C, accept interim financial statement August 2015.
Okay, I'm looking at page 1 of 6 for the check register, and these are paying out. On line 40, the $47,000 flow meter. What kind of warranty or what coverage do we have if that
Flow meter?
thing fails, or do we have that kind of?
Randall, can you address that?
Yes, I'll address that.
Thank you.
The contract calls for a 1-year labor warranty. In addition, and separate to that, the manufacturer of the flow meters, Micrometer from Southern California, ensures a 2-year materials warranty for the flow meters themselves.
Thank you. Because that's, I guess, it's standard.
Yeah,
So very good.
Micrometers,
Good.
yeah, this is very standard. They're one of the larger suppliers in the industry. They are, to be clear, for what it's worth, highly, highly reliable meters. So these are the newer, the mag meters?
These are my meters.
These are the newer, anyway, we can get into that later, but they're very, very reliable mechanisms. So hopefully zero problems.
While we're on one of 6, I have a question on that. Item number 62, Brown and Caldwell, that was a large diameter condition assessment. We paid $206,000 for. Has the board received the assessment?
No, Frank, it's not done yet. They're nearing we're getting the final push of data interpretation and all that. I believe most of the field work is done, and the engineering staff is working with Brown Caldwell to outline the report, so the actual report has not been produced yet.
Okay, so eventually we're going to see the report, we're going to know the condition.
Oh, absolutely, it's going to be a very important discussion, yes, absolutely.
But all I have.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, on the flow meter, if
So, yeah.
something were to go wrong with it, you don't toss it and have to get a new one. They're
All the contractors.
they're fixing it.
Call meter manufacturer.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Another quick question, on 2 of 6, I notice downtown Ford, it says construction in progress. Does that mean we bought a new pickup truck?
Yes.
We bought a Ford F-150.
And ordered some special items on it, is that why it's in progress?
Yes, we had it, I believe, I don't know if it's back yet, but it went to manufacturer aftermarket parts to get the toolboxes and the safety lights installed.
Are we buying off the state bid, or like a
Yes.
downtown Ford, second, right off the
Yes,
state
this is
bid?
right off the state approved
Okay.
and state pricing. The 22,000 on an F-150 is an excellent price.
Mhm.
Yeah, the fleet price.
Okay, any more questions on 8C? Looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
Oh,
Yeah, you move it.
I'll move.
It's moved in second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 8D, accept public sewer extension, Rose Garden subdivision. Got a question, I think?
So is this just an extra permit, or is a little?
No, this is
this
the completion of a long process. We
For all
have,
the Rose Garden?
correct, this is the final closeout of all of that.
Should it be a roll call vote?
No, PSX permits are basically standard business, so we
It's just a motion.
So just for the record, all through the process, I voted no, based on climate change and sea level rise, and also based on the town of Larkspur's general plan, which references development around these issues. So I want to show for the record that I'm not going to vote for this.
Okay, if I may comment on it. I think basically is the work's been done, paid for. Ross Valley shared a 50-50 cost on some of it
Oh, right,
with the developer.
right.
But is this, all of the 2,100 feet of 8-inch, 117 feet of 12-inch, is that all on their property? That's not out the street, that's
It's-
on the property.
There's a map here, and it shows.
Correct.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. President, and members of the board,
But let me just ask a question. We're in effect accepting responsibility for the maintenance of that system now. Is that what we're
Correct,
doing?
ownership and maintenance. of
Ownership and
infrastructure.
maintenance. Okay, just like any other developer, if you want to get your project sewered, you have to pay to hook up to the sewer and all those expenses.
They pay the bill.
Very similar to what happened at San Quentin when they wanted to hook up to our sewer system. They may have paid for a pump station and on a pipeline running on Sir Francis Drake,
Right.
but then we own it.
Correct. I think it's a fair analogy or whatever accurate.
Thank you.
The question I was going to ask is, we abandoned an existing one. Now, was that one of our priority projects to get rid of, or was it, why did we abandon it? Just because of capacity, or?
the capacity, age of the deficient trunk line, that was actually, this area was one of the areas flagged by our 2006 sheet cap as being under capacity.
So we got one of our projects half paid for.
Halfway, yeah, one of our projects.
Yeah, that's
halfway
pretty good.
through.
Okay, any more questions on that? A motion to,
I move we accept 8D.
what happened?
Is that what I say?
Michael,
We're accepting 8D.
you're approved then.
But just one more question. Is there an alternative? Could we not accept ownership and responsibility and keep that with the subdivision, or?
No, I mean, you have to have some basis for temporarily rejecting it for the moment, and then you'd have to give the other party an opportunity to, correct those problems, Frank, and I don't want to sound like an expert.
Let me just, I'll make,
And then who owns it?
Didn't we-
let me just make it a little comparison.
Yeah.
Sometimes a city will require a street to be put in with drainage, et cetera,
Yeah.
and then when it comes to maintenance, they don't accept it for maintenance, they say to the subdivision,
Take care of this.
take care, you're
Yeah.
gonna take care, we're not taking it on.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering,
No,
does that ever
that's-
happen with the sewer?
Absolutely.
Probably.
It's more rare because, yeah, of the
Okay.
specialization. But
Okay.
yeah, for landscape districts, et cetera. there's-
Okay, okay.
And we got their connection fees, right?
Yes.
We got those checks.
We
So
got
that would be really,
There's more to
that would
come.
be really unfair.
And then we have, if, you know, a developer, well, it'd be a developer, he's long gone, and who owns it? The homeowners, and they're not gonna repair it if they don't have to, you know, so you gotta maintain it. So do we have a motion and a second?
Sure, I'll second Michael's motion to.
Okay.
PSX.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, item 9, consideration of approving contract amendment number 1 with Harrison Associates to provide construction management and engineering services during construction for the Marin Culvert project. Now, we just approved that one, didn't we, last?
The construction contract, yes, was what was last. So this is basically really just a timely continuation of that. And as you noted, well, we've addressed in the staff report, we recognize this is coming very quickly to the board. So the board we've been involved in a series of steps on this thing that really go back over the last calendar year. We originally engaged Harris Services back in very like January, February of this year, just to start supporting the preliminary design concepts and move the process forward to identify the best fix for the culvert problem. And they participated in those discussions with the county, flood control staff, and so on. So that work got completed. It took the better part of the calendar year, just for reasons that are noted in the staff report. A lot of long timelines to get, permitting agency feedback, and also just a very slow process in terms of review and approval by the group of the design concepts. So basically, just as we were getting ready to, when we were at the phase of deciding how to deliver the construction, we realized we were going to have to do formal bidding, formal specs, et cetera. And partly the reason for that is early on it was unclear whether the project could be delivered, like through a separate construction contract with the county or what have you. That really got resolved in August, so it was kind of late in the game. And we said, okay, not a problem, we'll go the traditional route. So the district then prepared full-on bid documents, which were the basis for the construction bidding that went on and resulted in the award of the contract that was done last time. So the construction is basically ready to start on this thing. It's all moved very quickly due to the nature of the project. So this is an amendment to Harris's contract to basically have them carry it through to the district in terms of the field construction oversight, the reviews and submittals, basically what we call the services during construction, and also the construction inspection. It is the original contract scope and budget that they had was spent. They completed the work in a timely manner, very, very high quality. And I think as the board's aware, Harris already is doing extensive construction oversight with the district. So it was just a pretty logical fit given the time constraints and what have you. So their work is really broken down primarily into 3 areas. The biggest chunk of this, which is an ongoing theme with this project, is it's just a fairly intensive for its size because of the sensitivity of the work area. We're basically in the Cordmadera Creek flood control levee, and we're also on probably one of the most popular recreational trails in Marin County. So we have that going against us. So there's very, very extensive traffic controls and detour requirements, and then the construction itself. I know that we call this a culvert project, but it's probably one of the more sophisticated culverts that you'll see put in anytime soon. And in all seriousness, it's because of the site conditions, the anchoring systems and so forth to make it handle those large fluctuations with the flat gate on there. So that is what the amendment is for. Staff reviewed the scope and costs of the Harris services. The reasons for recommending the award are in the staff report, fairly straightforward. And the work is very time sensitive. We are basically still up against that October 15 deadline to be completely out of the site. So again, recognizing it's coming too late, but the way the project is unfolded, there hasn't been much other alternative on this. So we're recommending approval of the amendment to Harris to their current contract to go ahead and close out this project, carry it through the construction management phase. This job will be scheduled to be completely finished basically by mid-October, and we're out of this location at that point. So I'll stop there. We've got Randall and myself to answer any questions.
Okay, well, first of all, I see that there's bid document preparation, so have they already spent that money?
Yes.
They've incurred those expenses, yes.
So those were incurred.
Yeah.
And just engineering, design, and construction, they may or may not spend that money, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And then the construction management, I mean, this kind of this big chunk of the project is $119,000, and that's $40,000, a third of the project cost.
Yeah, it's not a standard proportion, Tom, in this case, I mean the ratio, so to speak, and the basic reason for that is because we're looking at 20 full days of field inspection time, that they're out there the entire, whatever, 8 hours of the workday. So there's just a lot of basically labor time for all the inspection relative to the actual construction work itself. So this job has some unusual ratios in terms of those typical cost comparisons. You're absolutely right. It is a high ratio, to be clear. But I think it's reflected by the job complexity and the public, the public presence. And all.
So they're going to be over the 100% of the.
Yes, this is a very, very sensitive, high-profile project. It's not the most complicated project in some ways, but it probably couldn't get more touchy in terms of where it's located right now. So we want a very continuous, very alert presence on this job the entire time.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Yes, go ahead.
The question is, I can't remember who designed the first culvert. Marin County Flood Control designed it for us, or did we have someone design it with their approval?
Yeah, it started out, roughly, Frank, the first iteration, the design was done under contract. Flood Control had a contract with, I believe, Stetson Engineering. And Stetson produced design drawings for this project. Then, prior to construction, there were some modifications, or what's the right word, revisions to those features. And then there was revisions during construction. So they started out with the Stetson design, which got incorporated into the larger project of the force main. And then that in turn had, again, subsequent modifications. So there's a chain of parties involved in this thing over time.
So it was originally a Stetson design that had to get modified at some point in time.
It's complicated, but there were changes made to the Stetson design.
We made them, or Marin County Flood Control?
Our engineering contractors and the construction management team collectively made these. So the main change was the type of HDPE pipe that we used, and that turned out to be part of the problem that we saw with the pipe being deflected by the buoyancy forces on the tide. Right.
So we didn't use all of Stetson Engineering's design. We
Right, but there were concerns noted with Stetson's design during construction, which is why the whole project started down this path. And basically what it was that the original design, and please be clear, I'm not technically critiquing it because it's a complicated set of factors, but it was proposed to be basically a reinforced concrete pipe, which is very, very, very heavy. And I think our understanding is there's virtually no, very few concrete pipes used in the application in that area. Randall, is that an accurate statement? The problem is concrete pipe, you plop it in the ground during construction. If you haven't done a whole bunch of site prep and consolidation, it's your same challenge with the day months. It's so heavy that over time, the risk, everything has its trade-offs. The risk with concrete pipe is that it would sink. So there were concerns raised with that during construction, and that's what led to some options for other pipe materials. The concrete pipe might have held up to the buoyancy forces, but you might have had, that's kind of this is the hindsight, you might have had other issues with the concrete. We don't, I want to be clear, the districts, we're not culvert experts. That was one, I think just for the board's context, it's important to understand, the district was immersed in a multi-million-dollar, high-profile, very urgent force main project. These culverts, in the scheme of things, were like, yeah, fix the culvert. You're out there doing construction, take care of them. We didn't do these analyses. We basically were like, okay, take care of this project as part of our larger capital project. It's not to dismiss any responsibilities or anything like that. It's just that we're not culvert experts. This isn't stuff that we spend a lot of time evaluating, is my main point. We're working from the record of how the project unfolded. Those technical concerns do make sense to us. I think Randall and I are both engineers. We both have PEs. The concerns with with settlement of a concrete pipe, we're working from kind of, with the benefit of hindsight, that those all make sense to us looking at it. So the current one, the reason, back to the concerns with the costs, very reasonable concerns, is this has it does end up using concrete, but it's using it to anchor basically a high-strength HDPE pipe. And it's a lower strength, lower weight concrete, so that it will tend to float. It will distribute its load on the bay muds. So it turned into a pretty complicated set of calculations, basically, is what happened. And we're almost there. So.
I guess your question is, why did we get stuck with it?
Twice. Yeah, that's kind of like the.
Well, we kind of bought the farm when we built our multi, we took over everything for the force main project. Again, in hindsight, well, you can see we might do it differently, but the idea of a cost share to quickly go in and take on these projects, I have to say would have made complete sense at the time. And this one, everything else went very well. This is the one culvert that did.
How much was our force main project?
Millions?
Approximately $9 million in
$9 million.
construction, just the construction.
Any more questions on the board?
So what is the total cost?
At this
Because
point,
there's some other figures on the second page.
This
Yeah.
was
Trying to get
119.
the what is
Yeah,
exactly
we
what
just,
we are
let me see if I can
going to pay out.
summarize that for you, Pam. We just bid the construction, it's now underway. Randall, that just approximate.
119,400.
Okay, so we'll call that 120. The all-in cost with Harris, going back to the beginning of this year and completing what they're going to be doing now, is going to be the 56 plus roughly 21, the 76, 78, call it 79,000. We're right in the ballpark of about $200,000 for this
Okay,
project.
can I ask in the future if we could have those figures
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
at the beginning?
Sure.
Because then I don't have to ask any
Okay.
questions.
And I guess to be clear,
Limit that.
we're not, I want to be very clear before, when we estimated what this looked like at the beginning of the year, we were off. We thought this was a pretty traditional culvert project. We were busy kicking around figures about, $40,000 to $50,000.
That's what I remember. I remember $40,000.
And over the course of this whole year, it has not.
Well, if you get the state and feds in there, you have to.
It's a pretty sensitive,
you have
yeah.
to write
We didn't
your-
account for
Being a
some of
planning
this.
commissioner, I've seen this, once the state and federal agencies come in.
Well,
Like I
we have
said,
to, yeah, we have to close the bike path,
No turn is
road all
not,
the
no
kids
stone
around.
is not.
You got the marine fisheries involved in
Yeah.
I think there's about 5 or 6 agencies.
When sea level rises,
Wow, we'll do a good- we'll do a good job.
Okay, any more questions of the board? Anything from the public out there? Thank you, sir. Okay, back to the board. What's the,
I would so move approval of the contract with Harrison Associates, yeah. For an amount not to exceed, and there should be a dollar amount in here.
additional
No, it doesn't have it.
No.
That's why I brought it
Sorry about
up,
that.
because I didn't know.
79,
Yeah, it's in the
6,
contract.
whatever, here. Right here.
It's,
Number two,
$76,780.
in the agreement number 2,
Yeah, the amendment.
it's exactly spelled out.
It says, the same thing, can you bring somewhere?
Not to exceed 7,678.
So that's the 76,000 is the sum of the past work and then this amendment.
So if the motion includes not to exceed $76,780, is that correct?
Total.
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 In total.
Total.
So it's an additional 56,000 or so. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I second Frank's. Yeah.
And we have-
Oh, you did.
Can you second?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Item 10, consideration.
Can I just have a point of order? We were just at a CMSA meeting, and there's a new law that we're supposed to be doing roll call votes for the minutes.
You can say that it is, you can show it
It's a new state
as.
law, right?
Yeah, no, I know.
And we're doing, so we should be doing
No,
roll call for everything, yeah. That's
or
what-
the minutes can reflect that it was unanimous, which would be everybody, or some agencies are saying Silva, Egger,
By law, they have to
yeah,
list out every name and yes or no.
yeah.
But we don't have to, is that right?
No, we do
No,
have to.
we can do it that way. There's a difference of opinion of how that's, if that's really required. Some agencies are doing it, some aren't, but,
I sent
Our
out 4
minutes do
agencies.
reflect the vote by
yeah,
name.
they do reflect the name. But that's an interesting situation with that.
We're getting
pronoun
county
section.
council to give us an opinion for seeing this.
Okay.
So
And they said
let
that.
them spend the money on you.
What did ever?
Okay.
It
Okay,
comes,
back to
it's in
item
the section
10.
of,
Consideration of adopting resolution 1484, approving a procurement policy. This does require a roll call. Okay, so this is a very complicated document to try to go through. And help me right on 6.3, the front page, which I explained. The final bullet allows the purchasing agent to delegate the authority to purchase goods priced up to $10,000. But back in the matrix, it's 25 and 50. Explain that one. Why is
Well,
that?
the purchasing agent is the general manager,
Right.
and delegation would go below general manager. So below general manager, the highest you see is $10,000.
So you mean, he can delegate it to a manager?
To a manager up to 10,000, to a superintendent up to 6, and to the senior soup up to 3,000.
And do we have a list of the managers?
That would be myself, Randall Ishii, or John Clark.
So a manager could spend up to $10,000 on something.
Yeah.
If
It's
the
been that way,
purchasing, yeah.
been that way for a long time. Well, it has less for you.
Not the general manager. just
Yeah,
maybe.
Brett Richards.
There is no policy to say that.
Well, but
That's why we have,
These amounts are lower
There is an
than other agencies have assigned to their managers, taking into
But does that answer your
consideration
question?
sensitivity with our
Tom,
district.
does that answer your question about the?
It does.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. And so if I go to 610, then, you can look at it as it's in that matrix. Then everything except, everything on the matrix below the board of directors does not have to be approved by the board of directors. In other words, all of those things on the chart, the lines 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Don't have to come back.
don't have to come over.
But they're purchases that would be from a line item of our budget or a contract that would approve.
Right.
Not,
Yes.
Right, these aren't willy-nilly purchases, I mean, that's the asterisk there, if you see, it's purchases items, well, that's specific to the.
Well, that's within the budget.
Right, and that's specific to the general manager authority, but these others are delegated authorities from the purchasing agent to these positions.
Mhm.
So
And they have to fit into our budget somewhere.
Right, these are all matrixed in a sense, these are purchases that you are flowing out of the approved budgets. So, you know, if a piece of equipment, like a senior supervisor is getting a piece of equipment, now remember, he's not just going out and doing this, we still have a procurement process with forms and so forth. But, so there's no shortage of documentation and so on, but that senior supervisor identifies that need, and within the direction he's gotten from, you know, his manager, those purchases can be made. Right now, everything comes up the chain.
This also, I believe, defines what the contract of sale is. And so the authority to commit funds. Okay, under 6.3, purchase of goods and materials, it defines exactly what an offer and acceptance is. So if the offer and acceptance is not valid, the district is not on the hook for the money, so, to pay. So it forces those people who have authority to authorize a purchase to go through the proper process to get the offer and acceptance, because someone else is going to be writing the check. They can't write checks. They can only sign an authorization.
But I want to be clear, if we, going back to sort of this table, and this is the way I think it is, if you were to say buy a vehicle that was $49,000, Greg could just go like, yep, it's in the budget, do it. If it happened to be 51, then you would have to come back to the board and say, guess what?
We
The
picked it out.
truck
It's
is
in the budget.
expensive.
Right.
Okay.
So
So
even if it was a budget item that was $52,000 or $51,000.
right, you'd have to
You'd
come
have
back.
to come back.
Right, right. So it is, yeah. The authorization to spend money or the framework in which it is spent always exists. It's just a question of whether
Right.
you need to come back and say,
This actually creates a framework that is very clear and that does not currently exist. So it creates a lot of confusion for staff.
a clear framework.
It creates
Of
the
the current situation.
potential for an atmosphere of distrust and,
Right.
all of those things come out of a confusing situation.
So this just for background, I think everyone's still aware of this, came out of a recommendation from the auditors, not this current round that they're just wrapping up, but from the prior round. It was part of that batch of policy gaps and subsequent recommendations that they provided to the district. So, and in my, time at the district, I can probably say safely that the lack of a procurement policy is one of the most common hang-ups where we're just standing around going, what do we do? We're not sure, there's no guidelines.
Right,
So there's
it's almost weekly.
yeah, so there's we've tried to fill some of these gaps while the policy was in development, so we've got a steady stream of, purchase order paperwork and requisition forms that provide good documentation once a purchase starts. But basically, for example, I will end up in discussions on anything from a $5,000 piece of software or something to, $100,000 heavy equipment fleet purchase or $200,000 fleet purchase. So that's just kind of some context. That's the gap that the policy is filling. Wendy and staff, we reviewed a range of example policies, kind of drew from what looked like some good standards. So what you have in the staff report is the bullet list is really just trying to give you the takeaway of those contents within the draft, but we don't want to go through those point by point. So I guess however you guys find it best to go through the draft policy, because there's a lot of details in there. Obviously, spending authority limits are very important. Process, checks and balances on big requisitions. Is there any particular area that you'd like to maybe focus on? Or,
I've just got some questions.
Okay, I'm done. Let's
So how have you been operating? I've been on the board.
in the gray area, Frank. We just haven't. Yeah, there really hasn't been. Basically, well, I want to be clear. We're not the animals aren't running the zoo or whatever. We have had, we're working from the approved budget. When we go make a fleet purchase, it's clearly an approved fleet purchase. We only have, you can see, everything is very well documented. I get requisition forms all the time. Wendy and Julie and others have developed some very good paperwork that wasn't there in the past. So we have a very good record-keeping system right now and very good documentation, but what we don't have is clear lines of authority for all these standard business decisions. We're not talking about the big capital projects. Obviously that always comes to the board. These are everything from tools to computers to trucks. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about.
Many agencies require purchase orders.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We don't, huh?
No, we use purchase orders.
Oh,
Yeah,
we do?
Yeah, we get competitive requests. We require 3 bids, et cetera. So my point in that is we're striving to do what we know are the best practices, but minus something like this policy, we still are operating without a lot of guidance.
How many of our managers or staff people are following the Form 700, the conflict of interest form?
Do you guys recall?
We just did the conflicts.
All of the
code.
managers, all of the superintendents.
Didn't we just
and
adopt the
inspectors.
conflicts code last week?
It goes, Frank, it goes
You didn't
down.
have to do any.
Goes down
Changes.
approximately 3
Changes.
levels. It goes this way, the board staff, it goes to the, what we call the supervisors. And actually, maybe that is it. Maybe is it 2 levels or 3 levels?
It's board, general manager, and council. It is the management staff of 3 of us, Randall, John, and I. It is our 2 superintendents, inspection and maintenance, and our inspector, because of what can happen out in the field as far as,
So those are the key people.
So they file an annual 700 form, just like we do.
I just put that on mine.
Any other questions?
Well, I just had some notes here. What was that? That question is answered. So that the sole source procurement, I was trying to figure out how. So we're saying what? There's only one vendor that sells or makes or sells a whatever. It's kind of a compactor that we.
yes, that can happen, especially with the equipment in our pump stations.
But your
And
question,
compatibility.
Where sole source comes up, it's generally when you've got an engineering person or a professional that you've used a lot and you need them to do something for $6,000 or something like that. Don't you think it's often used for professional services? Probably more than
Or more low cost.
equipment. Or unless you've got to buy a replacement piece.
Yeah, specialized software or data.
Sometimes training. Can't shop around for a class because I'm.
Okay, anything else?
I'm over on 6.9, 6.9.1, and it's about it's the old revolving door stuff. I'm not sure, it doesn't happen much here at all, but, so the question is, it says, an employee's, former employee's job, and needs a 1-year separation before they can act on something that has to do with that. My sense would be, make it 2 years, just out of a sense of a little extra precaution. What we're seeing right now with the CPUC in San Francisco, that's coming down like a deck of cards, a house of cards there. And one of the CPUC commissioners, well, it's been a while since he was with the utility, but I'm just thinking just to give us a little more cushion as far as ethical standards and conflicts of interest, changing it from 1 to 2. Does that seem workable, doable, reasonable?
No, it's fine. 1 year is the minimum. You can always make it more if you were going to save.
Where is that one?
That's on 6.91, right?
It's
Yeah, just.
kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, it's kind of in a paragraph.
And the one is way at the end of the line.
Yeah.
It's got a good exception too, because that's what I was worried about. Accept a contract for training or support directly related to the former employee's job. You know, you might want to hire the guy
Exactly.
a month to,
Help out with some.
okay, but,
Yeah.
Or somebody's, if you
Yeah,
have
well,
an
it's just
engineer.
about their authority to make decisions that affect their former employer.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, is the board's consensus to try, if there's no conflict that Jolie identifies, go ahead and make it 24
Yeah,
months?
1 year is
2
a
years?
minimum,
Change the 1 to 2. The 2 year minimum.
What if,
Let me ask a question. Let's say you have somebody who's working on this culvert, who is,
a little bit louder.
let's say you have somebody who's working on this culvert, and they leave after working on the culvert, and 14 months from now, we need that expertise, because that person worked on it.
No, this is
They're
only for
employees.
district employees.
Okay.
It does, so if you do contractor work for the district as a contractor, you know, come back tomorrow if the
Okay.
situation is correct. Yeah, this is only
Okay.
for active, or for, pardon me,
Well-
for current district employees.
The exception here does say, or support directly related to the former employee's job.
Yes, exactly.
if there were a staff member working on the culvert?
So we would come and explain what the exception is.
It's designed to prevent a staff member from then going out and saying, I now can get a sweetheart deal from the
Yeah,
Ross
okay.
Valley Sanitary District.
Got it.
But is it, in terms of the employee, I mean, the employee would go work for a contracting agency. Then that whole contracting agency, that whole contractor is
How would you read that?
Oh, yeah.
conflicted out?
No, it would be the employee.
Just the employee? Okay, couldn't work on the project.
Yeah.
Seems strange.
And then the last comment is on that 610, purchasing authorization levels. And so, you know, I've dealt with this with the city, and when you give the city manager the authority to purchase, says that 10,000, 15, 25, 50,000, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've always kind of erred on the caution side, and that 25,000 seems to be a more comfortable figure for me.
For general law cities, it's limited, for settlement purposes, it's limited to 50, but not contracting. There's a specific section for settlement.
So I just thought I'd bring that up for some discussion. I don't know, you know, or may feel perfectly comfortable with 50,000.
So in other words, for items that are budgeted,
It would still be fit
the
25,000.
general manager can, on his own ticket,
Mhm.
authorize up to $50,000 for those 3 categories, including professional services.
Yeah.
Well, so that would have allowed you to hire the rate consultant, for example.
Correct. Close. What was their amount? They were.
30.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, I was thinking of the, when you said that, I was thinking of the connection piece
The
there.
connection piece said yes.
Okay, but let's say that they offered to do the rate study for $49,000.
Under professional services.
You know, I mean, to me, that's kind of something that ought to come before the board.
If you want to lower it to 25, Frank, or 35?
No,
maybe?
25, let's see.
Yeah, I think that's-
35, let's put 35 down there, I'd be happy with that. But I think what you would want to do on this one too is if it's something that is important, let's say they would do a rate study for $31,000, I would think you'd want to bring that before the board.
Yeah, I mean, the topic is obviously kind of something you have to use judgment on. If you know, not every slice of $10,000 service is equal, if, you know, but it's a good point. I'm not sure how to clearly delineate that, but if the simple fix is to just bring it down, then that's fine. I mean, this policy, regardless of where these numbers land, if we get this on the books, it's going to take some time to kind of see how it's working.
Sure.
Yeah, not tonight, but I could imagine, so spending money on a consultant to do a rate study, boy, we are really interested in that.
Yeah.
If you were buying a truck that cost 40 versus 35, or, you know, that, I mean, I just think they're a different
I
type.
do too.
And so we can mess with the number tonight, but we might later want to think about whether they become
And we're not, we don't have like some big strong case to make for certain of these numbers. We kind of pulled them from
Let's try it
comparisons.
out.
So which numbers are we changing? Because if possible, it would be great to adopt the resolution with the edits.
Well, we do it, that's not what we're gonna do.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to capture.
I guess those 350s we changed to 35, and then Frank probably wants to change that 1 year to 2 years.
Right, the 1 year to 2 years on that,
And,
6.91.
all this detail, that's not really much change.
I trust supplies.
6.10, then the purchasing, the 50,000 in the 3 columns become 35,000.
Okay.
3 columns.
All right.
And
So
did
we're-
this go through the finance committee, by the way?
It was presented to the finance committee not this month, but 2 months ago, and we
Did
made
you
the
review it?
comments.
You did review it,
Yeah. We did make some
It was
comments.
presented when you were on the finance committee.
but we never went over it, we pushed it back. No.
Well, the request was that we do exactly what was done in the staff report, which was to provide basically a bullet point summary.
Did HR bring this forward?
They looked at it.
And Wendy, this is your putting together this resolution?
Well, see, it
Pretty
was in
much
last
primarily.
month's agenda, too.
Yeah, it was on the last
It was
agenda.
on
I
last
think it was
month's
one that got,
Right.
Yeah, it's just for discussion.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how it was born.
Yeah.
Well, it came out of the audit, the audit.
It came out of the audit. Staff, I researched several policies.
I reviewed this.
You've seen it.
Tentative.
Now, you went to the finance committee when it was still Peter and Tammy, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, I don't remember this in the finance committee.
So the finance did not go over.
No,
Yeah.
just you guys. Yeah,
We
just
didn't go
before-
We didn't-
I think the outcome of the finance committee was that you gave staff direction to do what we did in this staff report and bring it back to the whole board.
Okay.
When you were director-elect, you went to the finance committee. That's what you
That's
said.
what I did. Okay. Yeah, so, any comments? There isn't any others out there. Any further comments from the board? Let's,
And
we
we
will
will
suggest
just-
that keep it as a work in progress.
Exactly, Tom was going to say, I mean, recognize that keep in mind, we're adopting a policy that's filling a great big gap, and it's a very practical policy. This isn't some theoretical policy that kicks in every once in a blue moon. We'll use this right away, and we'll be using it, over the next fiscal year. And I think we'll find areas to tweak it, and certainly at some point, if the board, wants to do a check-in, or have the finance committee do a check-in in 3 or 4 months and say, hey, what's working, what's not working with the policy, any hiccups. We can certainly do that. It's a pretty extensive policy, it's brand new, and it's not like it's replacing one that's 80% similar. It's kind of filling a big gap. So yeah, we will plan on feedback or follow up with you guys. But do we have the specific changes? It sounds like just.
Yes, it was the
Yeah.
change 1 year to 2 and the $350,000 in the authorization matrix to $35,000.
Yeah, I would so move then we approve resolution number 1484, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Sanitary District Number 1 of Marin County approving a procurement policy, and on attachment B, the following, on 9, what was it?
691.
691, the 1 year becomes 2 years.
Yeah.
And on 610, on 3 columns under the general manager budget, the 50 becomes 35 for maintenance, for professional services, and for professional services related to construction.
Okay, good.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any more comments from the board? All in favor? Oh, wait, we need a roll
This
call.
one needs a
roll call.
Roll call. Roll call. Hold on.
Gaffney,
Aye.
Dorsey,
Aye.
Silla, Mays,
Aye.
Egan.
Aye.
And just for point of order, the chair always votes last.
That's what I was about.
Oh, apologies.
Should we take a break for about 5 minutes? Should we do that? Or should we keep going?
We can take a little break.
Take a break, yeah. Okay, item 11 is consideration of adoption resolution 1485, including an inventory management policy. And we need to have a roll call vote on this one too. Staff?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction. So this is a this is kind of that backlog we've been trying to get to. That's why you have a series of policies in front of you. So this is the inventory management policy. It was one that, again, originated with a recommendation back from the last completed fiscal year audit. And it recommended, developing and adopting inventory management. The staff went about assessing those needs and putting together a basic actual system in place, so to speak. There was a lot of physical work that had to get done first. Some major kind of reworking and cleanup at our the Anderson shop buildings, just clarifying where things were stored, et cetera. So there was a lot of just basic cleanup and counts and all of that being done as well. But this is the actual, this is more for going forward. Now that we've basically got the physical inventory in place, and all of the materials have been organized and sorted and are in standard locations. I won't go through this in detail. You've got the staff report. Basically, it's just setting out some, it's really a fairly minimal but practical for our level of operations in terms of tracking and managing inventory. We are, we're not the smallest and simplest, utility on earth by any stretch, but we're also not one with a huge flow of materials and so on that will justify, increasing levels of complexity and so on in terms of inventory management. So we're hoping that this one is sort of trying to strike a balance, that all the basics are there in terms of oversight and practices for inventory management, and this has been through all the reviews, so it's up for consideration of approval this evening. And I will stop there, and we've got, again, Wendy and the business services staff pretty much, along with support on a lot of the physical work and sort of assessing the practical needs, which was a lot of the operations and maintenance crew staff time. We've got answer questions. So that's it.
Okay, any questions from the board? Comments?
This had to go to the union, right?
No, that was
Oh,
one of
okay. Okay.
We showed it to Sophia, and this has nothing to do with their working conditions or conditions of their employment.
Have we had a problem in the past with stuff missing? Has that been a
We
issue?
don't know.
No idea. They don't have
We
to-
have no idea.
I would say it's probably very unlikely because these are not consumer products, so they're not very tempting to take for yourself, or even, there's not a market out, there's not a market out there for somebody to try to black market them.
So the gap's been there, though. I mean, there just hasn't been, regardless of what's been happening in reality, we haven't been able to track it and show it clearly.
What's the value of our inventory? How much is it?
It's about 125,000, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, to my earlier comment. So, for example, if you're a district who's handling, say, batches of 100 water meters, and a lot of these things that are really high dollar, they're coming in and out all the time. You have barcoding systems, you have some pretty sophisticated stuff. The volume
Also
and the
have large
nature.
warehouses.
Yeah, and we just, so a lot of this is still going to have, basic forms and more like Excel type documentation, but, all of the basics will be there.
May I add that the auditor did go and tour the sites that he toured last year. He was very impressed with the organization and the flow that was being outlined on how inventory would move through the various locations now.
Was this one of his recommendations too?
To come up, yes, but he had no example to provide us because he hadn't yet done a district that had an inventory management system. So this was interesting.
Most of the inventory we're keeping is.
On 6.2, it does not include tools, vehicles, generators, miscellaneous hardware such as fuel, bolts, etc. How do we account for that stuff? Do we have a list of automobiles? We must have it.
Yes, automobiles are considered fixed assets or a capital asset.
Generators,
And they're listed,
5.2.
5
oh, I'm sorry, 5.2,
Yeah.
5.2, I said, yeah, 5.2, sorry.
So some very expensive tools, greater than $5,000, other equipment, vehicles, some of the very large generators are on our asset listing already as an asset. But an inventory is something that moves and is consumed. A vehicle is an asset that stays and is not necessarily.
Yeah, vehicles are easy to track, but like tools, for instance, shovels, we have like, here, we got 14 shovels over here. Well, we broke 3 last month, so now we only have 11
Those are
shovels.
considered supplies. They're expensed as they're purchased.
So they're too minor.
They're too minor. Same thing with screws, bolts. In a manufacturing environment, things like that are generally called free pick, meaning they just keep them in a supply bin for use as needed.
What do they call it?
Free pick.
Free pick. Okay, any other questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me. Looking for a motion to approve.
I motion that we adopt resolution number 14-1485, approving an inventory management policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Roll call. Roll call.
Borstein,
Aye.
Scylla. Aye. Egger.
Aye.
Gaffney.
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Meigs, my apologies. Meigs?
Aye.
My fault. Still give me six.
Okay, 12 has been pulled, so item 13.
Yeah, I tried.
Consideration of the renewal of Anderson Drive lease agreement. This is a warehouse of about almost 3,000 square feet.
Yeah, so this kind of is the physical location, a lot of what we just talked about on the inventory policy is kept at the Anderson Street warehouse. Go ahead.
This is not the updated staff report
Oh,
What did you
that I
say?
sent in.
okay. Is there any,
There is a very significant change, and that is that the rent for all 3 years will stay at the $35.40 per month and does not increase the next 2 years.
okay, that's a good thing. Okay, well, so apologize for the confusion that we, so obviously missed an iteration in the last push on the staff report.
So we can get rid of line 2 and line 3 and then change 2015 to 2017 on the first line.
Yeah, so the costs are constant. Okay.
Yes, and the correction actually is reflected in the attachment B, which is the proposed second addendum to the lease, which is to extend it.
Oh, very good. Okay. So this is, as you can probably figure out by now, this is the lease renewal on the Anderson Drive units. We have 2 of those units. Most of you probably know if you haven't, it's pretty standard. Like it's one of a long row of industrial units. So it's in a fenced, paved area across the freeway. The units are side by side. You can walk between them at this point. They're big rolling doors, all that good stuff. So that's where a lot of our spare pumps, a lot of equipment that we don't want to be out in the weather, et cetera, is kept there. So this is a
3-year extension.
3-year extension. I'll kind of defer, and we can go straight to questions, because Wendy handled the basic negotiation and discussion with the current, to do the lease renewal. So pretty straightforward. I won't go through this in detail. That's all I've got for it.
Are we planning for warehouse and shop facilities?
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Tom. Can you repeat that? Tom?
Is there a plan for us to do warehouse and shop facilities?
I think eventually when the district lands at some sort of future home, those are standard features for a district operations headquarters to some degree. So I think we want those. The Anderson Drive units are they are the mix that we arrived at, and out of the last several years of activity. So it's not ideal, but they serve that function, pretty well.
How many years have we been doing this?
Since 2009.
Why can't we look at reviewing of building our own stuff? I mean, $3,500 a month?
Well, we don't, at this point, we don't have obviously, it's a great question. I mean, it goes, we've obviously been in flux the last, since this even started. We've got, we had a push for facilities over at the operations and maintenance yard, this building being acquired and modified and so forth. So the shop buildings, these leases were never, I don't think, necessarily intended to be the long-term forever solution, but they were part of that mix at the time. And I think just pragmatically where the district is right now physically, we aren't in a position to pursue the kinds of permanent improvements that you're describing. They're certainly appropriate for utility. We probably had them at one point before the treatment plant was demolished and so on, if we go back far enough. But we've been in this limbo mode, physical location-wise now for going on, almost two decades, 15 years?
That's $40,000.
43,000.
$43,000 a year, and how many years? And I think by now, looking at so many budgets, I'm sorry this did not come back. I don't know what happened. I remember reviewing this, and there was a lot of discussion, and it wasn't, kind of what you're saying similarly, but I think our planning efforts should be much better than that. If I look at how much money we've just agreed to for bonds, I don't know, it's just, to me, it's a
Well,
waste of money.
if we said, listen, let's build ourselves some space right now, where would, we can't put it.
Yeah, we need a location.
We need a location, and we'd have to pay for the location, even if you built your own site.
Well, what's the size of these units? What are we talking
About 2,800 square feet, something like
It
that.
says here.
2,832.
42,000 a year, I figured it equates to about a capital allowance of about $600,000, maybe a little bit more. And so can we buy a piece of land and build what we need, a shop and all this? Doesn't, for 600,000? And is there land? You see,
At one
it
time,
isn't necessarily a bad financial deal.
At one time, we looked at putting containers or something over on Larkspur Landing property.
Larkspur
and
doesn't want us to
said
do
no.
that.
Is that what we're gonna do, put them over there and then get rid of this, replace this with, do we have any room in our current facility for containers?
I don't
It's
know. I haven't.
3,000 It's 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It's 3,000, it's 30 by.
2,800.
I'm not sure what size.
Size of a three-bedroom house.
What size containers we're discussing on, but my relative impression is when you look at the Anderson Street shop buildings, you're not going to replace that useful space with like your typical cargo container type situations. It's a
No, shipping
usable-
container that's 40 feet long.
Yeah, these are,
12 feet.
these have, 18, 20-foot ceilings.
Okay, so we have storage
Two
above.
levels of storage, because you got forklifts putting stuff up on the
We
second
have,
levels.
we have heavy-duty industrial racking that goes up probably, the racking themselves is probably 12 feet.
Oh, easily,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
There's it's
Yeah.
not a small amount of stuff. It
Mhm.
doesn't, and again, I wasn't around for those earlier
And
discussions.
it
but I
houses a
had the
shop, so all of our shop tools, the,
like things we used to work on to rehab the smaller pumps and things like that, so there's machine
There's a
equipment.
workbench in there and everything.
Yeah, it's not,
Grinders and everything.
Yes.
They can repair stuff right there.
welders, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what is a plan though? What is a plan?
Well, this
For
is
the
a
future.
this is a 3-year lease.
I know.
If you look at everything else that's driving our timelines to have a permanent home where you could pursue the types of facilities you guys are describing, I think that is at least 3 years out, if not more. So this is not a long-term permanent solution. It's a very practical interim solution because we simply need suitable industrial space for this kind of activity. And we could go find land and build it. We could go rush into the city of Larkspur and tell them we want to build a shop building, and I think we can all predict how that would go. It's just a short, I really, seriously, it's a 3-year lease. it's better to own to rent maybe, but this is what we've got. It's competitive commercial space. It's not where we'd like to be, but it's where we are for the time being. So we get to a permanent home.
Right, and I look at that exactly in that context. I look at it in the context that I don't think it's great that our offices are outside the district, and I think that other people feel the same. And so,
Split up.
and exactly, and so I couldn't name where in the Ross Valley we could do all of this, but that's, in the strategic planning sort of mindset in my mind, but for the time being.
So what's the total amount we're gonna spend then? If you look at all the years we've been spending? Did you say you had the figure, Tom?
Pardon me?
Did you say you had a total figure? How many years since 2006, you said?
2009.
2009, it's 5 years.
127,440
127?
That's about 3 years.
All three?
40,000, 42,500 a year, something like that.
A year,
For a workshop.
or 5 years.
I don't think we have any option. I mean,
There is no option.
No, but I think that just to keep rolling it over to me is not looking at the bigger picture, and I think, I don't know.
I don't think,
But, yeah,
I don't think we are rolling.
I mean, I just hope we have some vision
For-
instead of just, because money and rent
Yeah.
goes nowhere. So, anyway, that's my.
So this is gonna take us till 16, 17, 18, huh?
Roughly through end of
17.
October
17.
2017.
17.
There's no getting out of this if we disagree.
But there is a way to get out
Are
of it
those
if we
things
have a
all, are they
plan.
all leased? Is it all?
Well, in that building?
Yes.
I would assume so. Yeah. Well, it does, I mean, clearly, in I think we all are ready to eventually move forward with the discussion of the Lordville landing property, but the hard reality is we're not there yet, and we have to have something to work with.
Well, is there a positive motion from the board here? I don't know what else we could do.
I move for approval of the second addendum extension to the industrial commercial lease at Anderson Place. And authorizing Greg to execute.
$18,600
$318,000.
over the 9 years that we've been in there, when we're done.
300,000. And 2,800 to 3,000 square feet's a medium three-bedroom house, approximate the size, would you say?
A large 3-bedroom.
So it's not out of the question
Yeah,
to
there's
plan
no
this
such-
differently, really. I don't know.
How many three-bedroom houses have 20-foot industrial ceilings?
I'm just giving an example,
No, I
Michael,
understand.
that's
No, no,
all
no.
I'm doing. I'm
I
not
understand.
looking at it as a high-rise or whatever, I'm just giving
No, I
a rough
understand, it's
estimate.
just, you have to have somewhere to have a workshop. And for the next 3 years, it's a fixed cost.
You could buy a lot for 100. You could buy a lot for 100. Anyway,
And
all right,
build,
done.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Yeah, we don't.
Oh, it isn't a roll
It's
call.
not a-
We don't need a roll. I got gun shy. Okay, all in favor of renewing the Anderson Drive lease agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I would love to see as part of our strategic plan, which I'm sure we're doing,
Not
that
part,
we
agreed with you.
incorporate our buildings into the district, and as part of that building,
Have a shot.
have a shop.
You're gonna hit the on-roads to give us some property.
I think we would. You know, like wineries are drilling into the mountains? That might be a place for
Well,
us
so
to be
just
quiet.
one last quick comment, you got, the points are all good. We are, we will be in a position to start looking at some of that stuff. And just to give you an example, the pump station 13 parcel is, it's we've got some fairly decent sized parcels. They're not gonna accommodate the district headquarters, but if you had some specific areas, specific needs you're trying to build for, that were appropriately distributed, like a dedicated storage facility for pump equipment or what have you, you could start to do some of that stuff eventually. And I just used the pump station 13 as an example because I know you guys wouldn't go to the site very often. But it's the one that it's tucked into the back of the Bonaire Shopping Center. And it's actually, we walk through it, it's a fairly large parcel that we only use, a good portion of it, don't get me wrong, but if you walk it and actually see it, it's like, wow, it's already in the back of a parking lot. It's already a big pump station building, and it's got this pretty decent footprint around it, and then it's got other space kind of around it that's just paving or junk or whatever it is. So my point of mentioning it is that when we get ready for that, I mean, we're going to want to be real creative. There's a lot of ways to slice this. I mean, the reason that property sometimes comes up for that parcel, which we do already own, is it may not serve as the total replacement of, say, the Anderson Street rentals, but conceptually, could you put a dedicated shop building there that took a big portion of what that does, and you say, okay, well, that's where I do my light pump rebuilds, and that's where I have all this equipment, and it's central to the district. So I think the key when we get there is going to be looking at it kind of creatively, not necessarily in this real strict way. So we'll get there. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Good. Okay, item 13 is item 14 is discussion and direction for creating a citizens oversight committee for usage of bond proceeds.
There is an item 14 in here?
There's no staff
There's
report.
no staff report.
There's no staff report, but there's it's on the.
So I can, if you like, I can say a few words about it. You know, coming from a city, quite often if there's a bond measure, the city has what's called a bond oversight committee. This committee meets, looks at what's going to be bonded, how much the bond's going to be sold for, and then comes along after it's done and looks to see if we did what we said we were going to do with the bond money. I'm thinking that we're trying to build public support for what we're doing here. We're trying to show the public that we are very responsible, that what we're doing is what needs to be done. And quite often cities use a bond oversight committee as someone who reinforces what the cities do as far as what they do with the bond money. I don't think this district's had a bond oversight committee in the past. I don't know, I've only been here for over 4 years now, but it just seems to make sense. It would be an extra, in effect, show the public that we are a very responsible agency. We have this bond committee, and they're looking at what we're doing, they're making sure that we spent the money the way we said we were going to spend the money. I'm thinking it could be, I don't know, 5 to 7 members, maybe a former board member or two, people who might be interested in the district and what we're doing with our bond. We're going to sell $30 million. We've already sold $17.9 million. That's $47.9 million in just a few years. So that's a lot of money. And it's just a way of building public confidence in the agency with this bond oversight committee, with citizens. We get some citizens. I'm sure we can get some citizens to volunteer, and we might even get a former board member to volunteer. So.
I've served on 2 of these, and they're actually hard to do. And but you know, it's a good idea. They're often set up when there's an election, and you promise that you're going to have a citizens oversight committee to make sure. But you know, we're trying to have an outreach program going, which I think is extremely important. And you know, this might be a good idea, and we could advertise. We could advertise for positions. It does require some work from staff. And generally, they take a look at how the bond proceeds are spent. Is really what we would do this time. We wouldn't get them in time for the bond sale. But
Right.
Here we've generated
But implementation.
$30 million, and here's our project list, and then they learn about the district. So there's some good things to it.
Well, they can
Would it make any sense?
advisory.
Well, you know, it would take a little bit of work to set it up, a little bit of staff time. We could check, there's other agencies that have them already set up, that have the model, that we don't have to go reinvent the wheel at all.
I just did one for the county, for a county bond issue, and we have a prototype. One of the things that I think you find in the state, they say they need a representative from industry, or they need a representative from agriculture, and that doesn't work. You know, we just need 5
Sure.
or some good citizens.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I think we could just advertise in the paper and then take applications and see if we
And
get
Tom,
any.
do you think it might make any sense, given that a month from now, we're gonna have the information from Mr. Slusky, the
Gibbs.
gentleman here, that we do some publicity before the next board meeting in the IJ or something else, saying, look, we're about to vote on this. Here's what we think we're gonna do, and if you would like to come, public, because frankly, not too excited.
Not packing the house.
Mr. Lamb, who's not here,
Yeah.
and let them really know that this is an
Sunday.
important one. We're voting on $30 million of your money, and this is what's happening, and try to give a little bit of an explanation. I don't know who would write that up. And then let them know that this is important, and discuss that we're gonna discuss the possibility of maybe doing this, and seeing if anybody, I mean, if nobody shows up, you know.
Well, they would, they probably.
But let them know what we're doing.
I mean, we could invite them to voting on the bond measure, which, you know, remember when we ran, there was criticism about that. And see, that's what I was trying to avoid. It's messy because there's too much information just dumped on you. And it's highly technical. It's virtually impossible for laymen to understand. That's why we have 2 attorneys looking at it. On an FA, but I would think it'd be better, once we get the proceeds and we announce the district is really involved in our, you know, replacement and repair, and this is just, you know, we've raised the rates, and this is part of the reason why, those are the big story out there, which it is.
It's-
It would be, I think a couple, just to give you a sense of timelines, excuse me, I think it'll be, you know, you still have a couple of months before really significant expenditures start kicking in, because we're going to have some business wrapping up at the end of this construction season. We do have current business, to be clear, but my main point is this: if you got the committee set up, if it took you a couple months to do that, the district collectively, it's not like the horse is left the barn where there's nothing left to talk about. We'll really still be, we have a very defined list of projects. They're very well documented. You have a very summarized list from the earlier discussion today, but everything we're working with is very well identified. So you have a little bit of time to kind of flesh it out and see how you want to do it. I think that if you, I think the idea of advertising or outreach or whatever the appropriate way to do it is to seek interested parties is great. And you've got, again, I just want to emphasize that you've got some time, because the bond sale, if it's going forward in what, if all goes as planned, it will be roughly, November, mid to late November before we're funding, I think. And then, you know, this isn't gonna just take off like a rocket. So if the oversight committee gets formed and kind of gets its, you know, its feet under it, even literally going into the holidays, I mean, you're gonna be okay on this. I think it's a great idea for us. Personally, I think if you can, the trade-offs are, as you mentioned, Tom, you've got, you are asking people to look at a lot of heavy information, but, you know, we can work to boil that down and keep it applicable. But it is additional workload for staff. I think we'll need some time to kind of put some detail to that and see what that looks like. Because I mean, the concept is very straightforward, obviously, but I think if we could talk to some people doing these in the real world already, that might help us understand what's involved with it and be able to plan accordingly to support it, you know, when it goes forward. So we certainly could benefit from having a bit of time to plan and develop staff support for the committee.
You know, it's basically what they reviewed is how the bond proceeds are used. And you probably keep that separate anyway. I mean, it's restricted money. It has to be used according to the documents. So.
We can't work separately. In this bond coming up, the idea is that a trustee will keep the money and we will submit the bills for them to pay directly.
We do it both ways, okay.
What do you mean both ways?
Pardon me, will let the district hold the money in a separate fund, or put it in the local agency investment fund. They have a bond investment area up there, which I kind of think is preferable. When the district writes the checks, or, yeah, Leaf doesn't write them, I think you get the money back from Leaf and write the check. So that's an option. Or you have a trustee hold the money. That's fine too, but they don't charge too much.
From your guys' experience, how often would a committee like that meet? Is it like quarterly or semi-annually? Or?
Yeah, quarterly
At the most.
Yeah, semi-annually, something like that. And you just have an expenditure report of bond proceeds, and how much is left and what we built.
Yeah, which is similar to what we, because from past board requests, this is just in the last couple of, maybe 2 quarters, I'm not sure. We've started providing that more detailed breakdown. So this doesn't sound like an unmanageable, as far as for staff support of it, especially if you're talking about like a twice a year meeting or something with the committee members and spending a couple hours going through things and answering questions or whatever is appropriate. I think with enough, obviously with enough advance notice, we're probably leveraging a lot of information we're already generating. So I don't see that as a real consideration for your guys' part. I think if you
We get to set our rules of what we're providing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the staff time, honestly, I think it's going to be harder to take the time to get the volunteers and get the committee set up than the actual committee meetings and the information you provide. That's the
It's
easy
the
part.
setup.
Staff's got to do the work anyway, whether there's a committee or no committee.
We already do, we do the report in our quarterly financial update.
So people volunteer and then you pick 3, 5?
Generally 5, but maybe 7, no more than that. It's always.
Okay. Okay. And basically just some good prominent newspaper ads and so on would be an appropriate way to get that, to solicit interest in it.
Put it on the website.
Okay. Maybe I'm just throwing out some dates to give us something to work with.
And maybe a note to the cities that are in our jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah,
Get the
get
mayor's-
the word out.
the
I
mayor's
think there's a couple ways we can get the word out in addition to a paper ad for sure. I was going to propose, do you want to look at the November board meeting as a time where you sort of officially say, okay, here are the people, or maybe the November,
Maybe
December?
Possible.
Yeah.
If it moves that fast.
And no
then,
rush on it.
Yeah.
If it works
Okay.
for November, that's fine.
Okay,
If
very
it
good.
doesn't, we'll do it in December.
I think we had some bylaws that were dreamed up for the people, how they operate, modus operandi. And, well, the school district did, because everybody was rattling around too much. We had to get it organized for them.
So we'll circle back in just one-on-one, and if you get 1 or 2 or even 2 or 3 examples of either existing or recent ones, we can follow up and get a little more idea how they're functioning. So,
Great.
okay. So I think it's kind of direction on it.
Outreach.
Something else we want to do?
Okay, that's good. Item 15, GM's report.
Okay, just a verbal report this month. We're not too far out from the last board meeting, so it's sort of a quick turnaround. I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights, actually, of items I think are of interest. I was able to attend this Bay Planning Coalition. They've been doing a series every, I think, once a year now in San Francisco. It's a one-day conference. It's titled the water. It's basically water, wastewater, and energy, and the kind of confluence of all 3 of those issues. It was just a really well attended, some outstanding speakers. The head of the Regional Water Quality Control Board, I think some of you have already heard before. Some great presentations. A lot going on out in the state, not in the nation, not like too far away from our radar, but this was just one of a number of discussions. CASA had several as well that reiterated or made very clear the importance of the district starting to think about whether it wants to make any effort, because it's a decision you can make in the near term. If you look out 12 to 18 months, that's probably the end of the line for efforts to realistically go pursue any of the Prop 84 funds and this last big funding round. So there's a lot of background to that, but the last big bundle of Prop 84 monies are being teed up. The basic framework is the IRWMP groups that are already established and a lot of other established groups like the Recycle Water Coalitions. Your BACWA is very active in this. But the point is, the framework of how that money is going to flow is really being put in place now. And the DWR and other administrating agencies are moving forward with their what's called the PSPs, preliminary. I think it's a preliminary solicitation package. It's when they first show the public the drafts of what they're going to give you when they're ready to start asking for projects. So people are lining up into groups because no one gets a project by themselves anymore. So the takeaway is, if we look 2 or 3 years down the road, we're in a bit of a blind spot for this funding. We talked about this with the Senate candidate, Mike McGuire. Our stuff is in a bit of a blind spot. It doesn't cleanly fit in any of the high priority spending categories or resource priorities that are set. So the trick for the district is to thread our interests into other interests. So whether that's recycled water, or that's sea level rise, or that's greenhouse gas and energy use efficiencies. How do you tie in, large scale wastewater collection system rehab and the benefits that it provides? Because they are real. They are real. I honestly call it a blind spot for a reason. They're just not clearly addressed. So something to think about for long term. It was a really excellent conference. One other quick note, I've been working with staff. We made some quick decisions a few weeks back to really clear the decks for a very important push on the remaining elements of implementing the maintenance management system software, the CMMS. The district's made a big investment in that software and the time to get to where it is. And long story short, we realized we're at that cusp where we really need to put some resources on it. I want to note that we're really fortunate to have a couple of people who came to the district already with some really great experience and knowledge of CMMS. And those people are basically leading the push. So it's a real timely effort. Stay tuned. There'll be more to talk about.
Who are they, Greg?
Those individuals are Steve Nixis in operations and maintenance, and Catherine Hayden, who works with Randall in engineering. Yeah, so there's a real brain trust there that we've been tapping, obviously, but we're trying to give them an opportunity to really run with this thing right now. Other than that, I sat on an interview panel earlier this week for the Marin Municipal Water District's new or pending operations and I think it's operations and maintenance manager. So it's a direct report to the GM. They have a slew of retirements coming up. This is probably the first, but they have a whole group of senior people at MWD that are in that demographic. So it's the second panel I've sat in on there, and it's been very, very helpful because it's a tremendous network usually of people that show up to the panels, and obviously a good opportunity to work with some of the senior MWD staff in a constructive manner. Other than that, I think we came off the CASA push, and we've had a lot of just basic business over the last 3 to 4 weeks since then. I'll be going to the Collection Systems of the Future workshop tomorrow. That's the next in the series. I'll use that opportunity to track down some people who might be resources for our upcoming strategic planning. And there's plenty else going on, but those are just some of the highlights. So that's it for me.
Okay, item 16, verbal report by board members and requests for future agenda items.
I attended the North Bay Watershed Association, had 2 amazing speakers. Harry does an incredible job there. It was just top notch. It was Ron Davis from the DSAL in California, Executive Director of Cal DSAL. I did question him about Marin County and DSAL, and I did not get an answer. But it was incredible what's going on out there, and I think DSAL may be coming back, or at least potentially coming back to Marin County. Also, they had another guest speaker. It's called Collaborative Watershed Stewardship, and that was Dennis Bowker. Do you know him?
I do not.
He is an amazing strategic plan guy. And he did this whole presentation on how relationships really interplay with the watershed. It was very, very ahead thinking. I hadn't seen a guest speaker like that. So I'm wondering if when we decide to move ahead on the strategic plan, if we could invite him. Okay. And then I went to a county task force meeting that I got invited to through Renee Goddard, who's on Zero Waste. And there's a big effort with various agencies, including CMSA, some other people at the county, Heidi Sanborn, who's involved with Sacramento. But this whole thing about pharmaceuticals and prescription drugs and drop-offs, and this whole thing is going to start really hitting all these agencies, especially about, disposable needles. And one of the staff from CMSA was there, and he said that there was a pipe over there, and they pulled out a bunch of syringes. So, I don't know, are your guys seeing that ever, Randy?
Not much.
No.
You can see it.
But they're flushing them down the toilet, some people, maybe not. So anyway, that was a very interesting group. That was fun. That was a fun group.
The NBWS was formed really for Prop 84 money, wasn't it?
I don't know the history. That would make sense, because the big push, 5, 6, 8 years ago, however long it was now, it's probably more than that. That was the big push to the IRWP framework, and that is why all the monies now flow through that. So if you're not part of an IRWP, if you're not part of that type of group, so it wouldn't surprise me if that was the driver for NBWA's formation.
It was.
Yeah.
Actually, I worked on it.
So do you want me to bring up what I want to put on the agenda now, or after people?
Well, yeah,
So
while you're at it, why don't we go through each board member and you ideas for the future?
I'm not going to get this out. I want to talk about what we're doing for moving on with the strategic plan, because I looked at HR's note and it's very generic and vague. So I want a date. Sorry, but
Okay, so
I think we've done all the big stuff. Now we're trying to move ahead. I think it will help us overall.
No question.
Okay. And maybe Ives could give us
Hey, he'll definitely, I expect to, he'll certainly stress the importance of, as a district, of getting to a point where you're incorporating planning. Yeah, no question.
Yeah. Okay. That's it.
I've just got a couple, last month we didn't get to the utility cost management letter.
Thank you.
It was in a packet we never got.
I was confused with it.
Before it came in, I happened to run across the contact. So I called down there and said, gee, Frank Gable, Lost Valley, and you were going to do a study for us, and, I've never seen anything. What's up?
Yeah.
He said, well, I got the PG&E bills right away, but I didn't get phone bills, and so I asked for phone bills, and they didn't come, and then I contacted you guys again, asked for phone bills again, and they didn't come, and then he finally said that the district said, no, we're not going to look at the phone, we're not going to do the phone bills, just PG&E. But when the board looked at it when he was here, we talked about PG&E and phone bills.
Well, we only got I'm aware of the letter, and we probably should have attached some kind of brief staff for it, but it was a pretty succinct letter, as you saw. That was a no-cost contract.
Right.
They had free rein to kind of go, okay, where can we save money? This wasn't like a time of, to be clear, this wasn't like the larger time of use type demand study. This was your basic stuff, like your rate structure,
Right.
your phones, et cetera. Yeah. So the letter, and I apologize because I don't have it in front of you, it was in last month's package. It basically says we were unable to identify savings.
On the PG&E. Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he never looked at the phone bills because he never got them.
I don't know the details, Frank, honestly, but do you have any recollection of any?
He advised it when Mark Miller advised him that we were not going to look at phone. He decided not to look at the phone bills. That was on telephone. So I'm just wondering about, I don't know where our phone bills are, how many cell phones we have out there, and it's a couple $100 a year, I guess.
None of those, more than that. We got a big list of telephone charges. Take a look in this, we've got scans of telephone charges.
Well, is there something we want to, do we want to follow up with them? I mean, our intent was to give them what they asked for. If they've got gaps they want to look at it, whether it's phone bills or what have you, we can certainly do that. We are in the midst, I mean, we're making two, well, Comcast is making upgrades at both Kerner and Larkspur Landing for their fiber optic services, and they're upgrading that, a lot of this, sorry, we're in the wrong building. They're upgrading a fair amount of the neighborhood around Kerner as well. My point in mentioning that is they basically are rolling us into, like for phone service, they're rolling that into a voice over internet phone service. So the nature of that aspect of district utility service is, at this point, at least over the next couple of months, that is going to be transitioning. It's basically just well, there's a lot of technical reasons for it, but phones have many options these days, and the providing of the voice over internet phones that Comcast can provide competitively, that's I'm just using that as an example of what's going on.
Are we going over to Comcast? Are we changing?
We've been with Comcast, frankly. We're providing these service upgrades, and we're renewing our contracts with them.
They do our phones too?
They will be. They can. That's what we're switching over to, is a
I
voice
can
over
tell you
internet.
some stories about Comcast with
Yeah.
That's the joy of having a monopoly on cable. So.
It's $415. Whereas AT&T probably.
Verizon is their cell phone.
And Verizon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Verizon
those
has
are
the
the
best
ridiculous
coverage for Fairfax and Canyons, because I live in the Canyons. I don't
That's why.
That's the
Verizon is so
only
good.
phone that can reach Fairfax and Canyons, and there's a pump station up front. But.
I have AT&T, I don't get service.
Yeah. You're further down.
You like that?
Don't matter to me.
Yeah.
Don't matter to me. I have two hard lines and 3 cell phones, so they're getting with a hard line.
Our phones are not a simple thing. We have phone lines to each of our pump stations for their auto dialers.
Mhm.
We have backup cell phones for our major pump stations. We have cell phones for our guys in the field, plus they have the emergency radios, which operates on a phone line to get it back to the district office. We have the incoming and outgoing lines into the office there and at Larkspur Landing Circle. And we have data lines, which are only T1 lines, which are very slow. And with our CMMS, that's why we upgrade with Comcast on the internet to fiber optic.
Now, see, if someone asked me, what's your annual phone bill, I would have no idea whatsoever. Would we? Do we?
Oh, yeah,
Total
we
phone
absolutely
service,
can. We have a line item in our budget.
including everything, cell phones,
Yeah,
Telephone is telephone, yes.
telephone, everything.
yeah, we do track that.
Fiber optic would be way less expensive and faster than T1.
One other issue, just our conservation water reclamation reduction program, MMWD is dragging their heels. I don't know why. I had talked to them a year ago, and they said, "Yep, we're going to get on it." I talked to them again 6 months ago. They said, "Yep, we're going to get on it." And they've got the models. We fund their rebate program for them, and they can't seem to get it together. I'm wondering if we ought to just put a little something together about for our public agencies and about water journals, about some greywater systems, and outreach to our cities. And because I've had a few people go, "I thought you guys budgeted money for some of that." Well, we did. Well, how come I don't see anything? I don't know anything. Well, we're not implementing it.
Yeah.
If we wait on them, we're going to go 2 years with it.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
money.
we were kind of hoping that, because administration of a grant funding program is a lot of, it is a fair amount of overhead. And our intent was to say, okay, we've got some funds that might have a good common use between the two agencies, and utilize ideally their administrative existing support, because they already have a fairly extensive, what I call kind of a real retail level rebate program.
Right. Yeah.
So that was sort of the theory. In practice, it hasn't quite laid out, as you mentioned, right? And there is a lot of, interesting things going on right now with, with gray water. We've talked about this in the past. The regulatory landscape got much clearer a couple years ago. The technical feasibilities, the small systems have gotten better. People are dabbling in it, but I think one of the things we thought might be interesting is, because what's missing right now is a clear standard where an average homeowner says, oh yeah, I'm going to go, because they're expensive. You go spend several thousands of dollars, you want to know what you're getting. There's not a good solid pilot demonstration program, that sort of leverages the clearance that the regulators gave everyone in the state a couple years ago. So we were thinking, well, that's one option. And we even kicked that around just conceptually with their staff, at a senior level, I should say. And I also did outreach to the county public health, because they have an amazing amount of information that I learned about gray water systems. The county is working on they have streamlined, I think it's a fair description, the entire permitting process for gray water systems. They have 3 categories. There's 2 lower categories that are relatively straightforward from a permitting process. So my point in mentioning all this is a couple of those pieces have started to fall into place, but no one's really taken the various wires and kind of put them together on gray water. So that was something we were kicking around, but it didn't really get traction. I made it clear in some of those outreach conversations, just for the board's understanding, that we had up to a couple $100,000 to talk about. I was hoping that was going to be bringing people to the table, and it really didn't. Now I want to be fair. We haven't spent a ton of time really pounding this and chasing it down, and everybody's busy with the usual stuff. But it just, the long and short of it is, it hasn't gotten traction. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, because I think the needs are out there, and the benefit, whether it's public education or providing a good pilot baseline level of information on gray water. I think it's got a lot of potential, but the agencies haven't quite been able to package it right now. So
Well, also
if we want to use the funds for other things, but
I'll try to put something together for waterless urinals. And we got a number of schools,
public buildings, schools.
Wait a minute, waterless urinals are a real problem for sewers. And I don't think we should be promoting them. I think they cause the production of hydrogen sulfide gas. And I've heard they can be explosive. I don't think we want to promote waterless urinals.
Well, that's what we've been trying to, that's a program we put together. One waterless urinal saves
Yeah, but it's bad for the
40,000 gallons of water a year. That's 40,000 gallons of water per waterless urinal that we don't have to transport and treat.
But you get all the strength. You lose the dilution. You get the full strength that you have to treat.
County's got them in all their buildings.
Ask our staff. I think that they're a problem.
I don't have any experience, other than obviously seeing them in places and so on. It's not, at the industry level, I hear different things. I've heard some of the things you've alluded to, Tom. I don't have anything, that I've seen study-wise or what have you.
Okay, maybe we should look it up, because I've heard that before. What I want to do is, I'd like to have us identify a few projects and apply for state revolving fund loans on them.
That'd be great.
I'd like them, let's identify what we think we might get, a couple of them. And it might be in our next 3-year, list of projects, because there's a lead time for them. And I think that South San Francisco got $30 million for kind of unnamed projects, but for a kind of as a capital fund. And they picked projects and they applied for the loans and got them over a series of years. So I'll try and find out about that. But I think if we identify a couple of projects.
Somebody mentioned to me that Las Colinas has a state revolving fund. I could be wrong.
No, I think several local agencies.
But they mentioned that they've got them for their lateral replacement, and they're doing some, or they're doing something with the state revolving fund.
Yeah, they didn't want to get them for their treatment plant, which was surprised me. Devano got a great big one, and applied for one in Sausalito City.
So
but I'd like to get it on. The first thing we do is we get on the priority list, and it's a real simple application, and you list projects, and then you press it. And they fund almost all the projects. And we could get like 2% money.
And I believe, is the SRF administration, is that part of the shift of all that moving over to, from Department of Public Health to the regional boards?
That might be the water SRF. No,
Just
this
the
has
water.
always been through the original board up there.
Okay,
So,
so.
you know, Vivian probably knows all about it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'd like us to
I
do.
think that's great. Other, you know, Pat used to say that was almost impossible to get.
They aren't. No. I heard
I
him
love
say
your
that.
optimism.
They're not impossible to get. They do it all the time. But just about everybody in this.
So the last two topics, I just wanted to make a connection real quick to the board. What, you know, I know we just finished, we've gotten a little bit of a break on the lateral topic, lateral ordinance discussion. But one of the things that has become very clear from the last couple of months of activities and all the information that's been developed is that the district needs to start thinking, and it's not something for the next couple of months, but certainly if you're looking at more than a year or two, what would be an appropriate funding strategy to help incentivize and drive the lateral replacement process. So whether that's grant funding or whether that's a new loan program, I think you're thinking of what Las Vegas has is the AB 472. They helped push that through, I think they helped lobby for it to get it passed. That's the loan program. That is the program that lets a district set up a program where a property owner replaces their lateral, gets a construction loan for it, goes through proper processes, but then a low-interest loan basically gets attached to the property taxes. And the beauty of that is cash flow burden is relieved, it's tied to the property, and it just churns steadily over 10 or however many years. So right now, that's a real promising future component of lateral funding, but what we're finding is that there's not a clear picture on lateral funding. And I know this is a bit of a detail, but let me give you why it's so important. If you're looking at an activity level, just pick a number of 500 laterals a year that you want to provide any level of financial support to that's meaningful, well, the math adds up pretty quickly. So if you're doing 500 laterals a year, let's say you're doing a loan program. Let's say you do 200 loans a year. That's $6,000 a loan. Okay? So it starts adding up pretty fast. Pretty soon you're looking at $500,000, $1 million for some of these things. We don't know that that's going to be the case because that whole thing is in so much flux. But what we can see is the potential for some significant funding needs to help drive the lateral replacement program to help the extent the district wants to do that, whether it's loans, whether it's grants. So I just want to flag that because, A, if we're thinking about ideas of what to do with, for example, some of these revenues, or not revenues, pardon me, grant funds, we're already, I had to figure out the other day, so we're 2 months into the fiscal year, roughly, two to 3 months into the job. I think we're north of, we're well over half spent on the grant funds. The $400,000 in the grant funds that we allocated for this fiscal year. So the burn rate on grant funds has gone up substantially. There's virtually no question before we get halfway through this fiscal year, we'll have exhausted those grant monies. So the point of mentioning is, if we're going to go out looking for SRF, if we're going to be looking at creative other sources of financing, keep in mind this new potential long-term need. It's not a need for next fiscal year, but it can start to be one if you're looking out much further than that. Last comment on that is there's a CASA-sponsored one-day conference in Sacramento in I think mid to late October that is all about the current state of funding opportunities. Prop 84.
For laterals?
Yeah,
Oh,
for everything.
it's
It's a CASA-sponsored conference. It's one day. They're doing 2 of them around the state. They're doing one in Southern California, I think, and one in Sacramento.
We should probably be up there.
Well, yeah, I'm already, we got a couple people going. I'm registered, so we'll be tracking it. Okay.
Comments? Suggestions?
You got 17 feet, was that?
Yeah, no, we got one more item.
So then we've got item 17, which is
That was the.
discussion of the finance committee report. Is that essentially what it is, or the finance?
Yeah, on the minutes for your meeting.
Okay, it's tab, let's get there.
C, on the next page,
C.
info C. That's right after. is
Item 4,
item 3.
item 3, I couldn't read.
So there's a reference here that the staff director letter to the mayor, IJ, suggested that he can sign. The letter would explain the district's positions on the state's audit of the district. There is an editorial about saying the audit is being laid on the district trooper. So, and then it goes on a little further about considering the Marin voice. So, I have to be nice to say this. I don't want anything going out unless it's a board decision and it's a board vote. Otherwise, I have been burned in the past. I don't want to say exactly who. The letters have been sent out with my name attached to it. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I think it might be part of Robert's rules, and as a courtesy, I think we need to represent all of us together and not get into someone's point of view.
Yeah, I think.
I have a lot of
Tom, do you
concern
wanna
about
comment
that.
on the
There's been a lot of
context?
controversy with the agency and the IJ of letters going out to CMSA.
Do I want to comment
et
on the
cetera.
content?
Pardon, the context of that, of those.
We were discussing, I mean, I'm not taking a position on what was said, but we were discussing the image of the district and how that would affect the sale of the bonds. And so that is how we stumbled into sort of a Marin voice and the audit.
Yeah, and so Pam, everything you said makes 100% sense to me. Just for context, we were commenting on the fact that the district missed an opportunity to make a very valuable public point. When the JLAC approved the state audit, there was all of the press coverage and all the press releases. There's not virtually one word in there about the fact that the district initiated that process over a year ago. And we're the ones that brought it to the legislative people to request it be brought to JLAC. We're the ones that provided the testimony. We're the ones that provided all the paperwork and the recommendations for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
That whole point, when this board voted to pursue that audit, one of the basic reasons was so that it would be a good tool for restoring public confidence, and the fact that we were taking it proactively was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the whole point of this discussion, again, relative to the bonds and all that, was noting the fact that we basically missed that opportunity. So Levine did a press release, no mention of what the district's role really was. IJ picked it up, basically made it sound like this was shoved down our throats. It wasn't. And it was unfortunate, and the point is not to revisit that. The point is that was a very clear public outreach and public relations opportunity that we weren't able to take advantage of. And in the context of the setting the stage for the bond sale, we would like to make sure we are addressing those kinds of issues when they come up. If there's a clear picture, it's not being told, we want to make a point of telling it. And to your earlier request, my only feedback to the board, because obviously putting stuff out in public under official, the position of the district is a big deal, is that there are situations where if you can't respond quickly, you're done. The news cycle is 24 hours, if that, these days 24 minutes. If you haven't covered it within the first couple of days, unless it comes back on its own, you're done. So we do need to think about, maybe something for the public outreach committee to discuss. How does the district put in place an approach that does allow us to respond to important public dialogue in a timely manner? Because right now, we don't really have the ability to do that. So
We've
that's
been
kind
through
of
this discussion many times prior to you coming on board. And
what was it?
I'm just letting everybody know here, and for the record, I don't want, if there's a letter coming from the board, if it hasn't been voted on and it's placing some kind of, I'm going to rebuttal it by writing a letter to the paper and saying I wasn't part of the consultation.
So you're saying that a board member cannot write a letter to the.
No, I think she's saying the board can, but the board needs to do it. not-
No. and
You can
an
write- you can-
individual
no, you can
a
write
letter,
whatever you
and
want,
and
just-
I could write a letter as president of the board.
Yeah, you
And I-
can.
and
Yeah.
and if I don't say it's the board's opinion, I can say
Right,
what I want.
Yeah.
right. You can do that.
That's what I think. I
But
can
you
do.
have to, I think it'd be clear that you're not representing the whole board, you're representing yourself.
Okay.
So let's just talk a little bit about the Marin voice. So a few years ago, when there was a lot of bad publicity around and the IJ was writing stories, the district was trying to respond and writing letters and Marin voice, and it didn't get better, it got worse. And so the IJ said, well, you don't like what we're writing? Here, try this one. And next thing you know, it was
Yeah.
it was worse than the previous one.
Feedback.
And pretty soon, we were like in this no-win situation with the Marin IJ. I don't think we need, I read that editorial, I thought, it didn't offend me. So if we're gonna start responding to that editorial, like, gee, you misrepresented or whatever, next thing you know, the next editorial is gonna be a little,
Yeah.
not as,
That's a good point.
I mean, if
You don't want to
there's
get
something.
into
No,
yeah.
And Frank did make the point, he
If there's
responded
a
in the
real
article, he made
issue-
the point that we had asked for it.
Yeah, that's right.
And the only reason I didn't answer Halstead's call was because he was calling from some other number, and I didn't pick it up for a while.
Yeah, no.
Great point.
I don't know, I just.
I don't see it as a need to respond to that, whether written voice or even a letter. I think when they show up, and I don't know when they're coming, when we issue a press release, well, they're here, we asked them to come, and they've arrived.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that's how you deal
Oh,
with
it does.
it. Very positive.
Yeah, good points, good points.
I'm new to this. If the IJ calls me and asks me a question, am I allowed?
Oh, absolutely. You're an elected official, you have a position,
How's
absolutely.
that different?
He's speaking as his own.
But he's speaking he's representing himself, he's not representing the whole board,
Yeah.
No.
And sometimes the whole board may need to do something like this, and then we're gonna have it in the meeting, and we'll talk about it. Yes, we're gonna send this out because we have to address it. That's fine, the board can do that.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
No.
I think we're done.
Okay?
Meeting adjourned.
All right. Thanks, guys.